After a billionaire COO releases his autobiography, he receives a delightful visit from a little girl who says, "Sir, you forgot to put mommy in your book." He smirks with amusement. "And what did your mommy do to earn a place in my book?" Only to pause in surprise at the little girl's response. Before we begin, let us know and share where you're tuning in from in the comments. And don't forget to like this video to support the channel. Now, sit back and relax, and enjoy the story that Romeo Calloway has spent years perfecting. His image shines through in every interview. Every handshake and every strategic move had beautifully culminated in this moment, standing in a grand ballroom filled with adoring fans, clutching copies of the Calloway legacy. Eager for his signature, the air was filled with the delightful scent of luxury. With cologne and champagne, it was the kind of luxurious celebration that filled the air with excitement. And his name was celebrated all around, adorned in gold on banners gracefully hanging from marble pillars, a bestseller. People naturally adored an underdog story, and he had provided them with a wonderful rags-to-riches tale. The journey of overcoming challenges leads to success, showcasing a refined and thoughtful narrative of his past. Delivered in a neat 400-page package, he had just signed another book, when a small voice cuts through the hum of conversation. "Sir, you forgot to include mommy in your book." Romeo barely glanced up at first, imagining a caring mother behind the child, perhaps an enthusiastic fan eager to connect with him emotionally. But there was no one, just a little girl standing there, gripping the book as if it held the answers to the universe. She couldn't have been older than 7, her dark curls slightly frizzy from the humidity, her expression steady and bright. Filled with anticipation as if she had rehearsed this moment 100 times, he let out a short breath, more amused than anything. "Did I?" Now he capped his pen, leaning back in his chair. "And who might your mother be?" "Be the girl who tilts her head. She's the part you left out that captured his attention." He sat up straighter, studying her more carefully. The media, always ready and attentive, had captured on cameras. Shifting flashes danced as someone softly whispered he could. He already envisioned the headlines as he rested his forearms on the table, keeping his tone cheerful. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily." "Monroe." The name resonated softly in his chest. Monroe. His mind began to whirl with possibilities. As he navigated through old memories, nothing came to him right away. He remained steady, not flinching, and continued to embrace the moment. Lily lifted her head and asked, "What makes you think your mom should be in my book?" Copy flipping to the dedication page, she gently tapped a tiny finger against the words, "For those who supported me." Even when you mentioned this and overlooked her in the room, had quieted, and people were watching, now eagerly anticipating his reaction. He could feel the weight of their excitement. Curiosity blossoming and the speculation taking shape before he could even decide how he felt about it himself. He kept his. Lily stood firm in the face of a strong accusation, her response measured and unwavering. Before he could respond, a woman from the event staff made an accusation, believing it to be the truth. Uniform approached gently, resting a hand on Lily's shoulder. "Sweetheart, let's not disturb Mr. Calloway." Romeo was on the verge of expressing something exciting, though he wasn't quite sure what it would be when Lily brushed off the woman's touch with a smile. "I'm not disturbing him. I'm just sharing my thoughts." What he forgot. Then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, she turned and walked away. As her small frame blended into the crowd, the event continued with renewed energy. But Romeo, he effortlessly moved through the rest of the night, his hands signing books, a smile lighting up his face for photos and responding with enthusiasm. Questions, yet his mind stayed focused on the girl with the unwavering certainty in her voice. He could have easily dismissed it. The kids were always saying things, and yet there was something special about that encounter that caught his attention. Later, in the back seat of his car, he gazed at the city light streaking past the tinted windows, encouraging himself to. He decided to pull out his phone instead, saying, "Noah," with enthusiasm as soon as he could. There was a rustling of papers in the background. "Boss, I'm hopeful. You're not calling to express frustration about me leaving early." "I was just overwhelmed by the lavish surroundings and those gigantic shrimp." "Romeo, it seems like there's something important for you to explore regarding a kid named Lily." Monroe discovers her origins, and after a brief moment of silence, Noah responds, "Whistled the one from the singing that was gold. And you should have seen the look. I see the potential in people's faces, and I'm not concerned about the press, which is why you encourage me to explore further." Noah replied with a hint of humor. All right, I'll see what I can find. So, who's the mom, Romeo? Noah took a moment before he spoke, and that's exactly what I need you to discover. Once more, with a hint of amusement, I recognize that expression. You can't see me. And that's perfectly fine. You experience this intriguing moment of reflection when something truly resonates with you. Romeo exhaled sharply upon discovering Noah's chuckle. You got it, boss. The call ended on a positive note. However, the unease faded as the next morning, Romeo arrived at his office early. He immersed himself in work, diving into meetings and emails, keeping himself busy with an endless stream of tasks. Stream of numbers and projections, yet occasionally his thoughts drifted back to. Noah strolled into the room, feeling a sense of warmth from Lily's small voice, which carried a gentle certainty about how she felt forgotten by noon. In his office, a manila folder in hand, he dropped it onto the desk with a playful thud. Well, he said, flopping onto the couch, you might be surprised by this. Romeo opened the file, the first thing he noticed was the name Charlotte Charlie Monroe, and it felt like the air in the room transformed as the name drew him in. In a single instant, he could see her wild sharpness, unraveling years in a backward glance. Unyielding is the woman who had once been the closest thing he had to a home, the one he had walked away from without. Looking back, Noah smirked. I take it you remember her. Romeo closed the file, fingers pressed against the cover, as if it held a secret that could ignite his curiosity. Where is she now? Noah stretched, radiating a sense of anticipation, delightfully amused by the situation at a charming little bookstore in a lovely neighborhood. Scandals no dirt, just a peaceful life. Romeo tapped a finger against the desk and Noah, a spirited kid, is 7 years old and lives with Charlie, while Lily Monroe adds a touch of joy to their lives. Father leaned forward, his eyes bright with curiosity. So, boss, want to share what's on your mind? There's something truly remarkable about her mom, but Romeo simply gazed out the window instead of responding. His jaw set, pulse a little too steady for his liking. He felt a mix of emotions, uncertain whether it was more about Charlie's return or something else entirely in his orbit, or the fact that for the first time in years a question lingered in his mind, inviting exploration and curiosity. Who was Lily Monroe, and why had Charlie never mentioned her? He stood, grabbed his jacket, and headed for the door. Noah sat up, curious, and asked, Where are you going? Excited to uncover some answers. Romeo had dedicated his life to mastering control, shaping his image, his success, his story. But as he sat in the back of his car gazing out at the city that had made him, he felt something shift beneath his feet. The name in the file sat like a stone in his chest. Charlotte Monroe, Charlie Anam. He hadn't shared in a long time. For over a decade, he had been 24 the last time he saw her, eagerly stepping into a new chapter. Success is on the horizon as he finally makes a name for himself. With his ambition shining brighter than anything else, Charlie has always been there. From the very start. Back when his dreams were vibrant sketches on napkins and late-night musings about the bright future she envisioned, had faith in him even before he recognized it himself. And when the opportunity arose, he was ready. Walked away believing that love and success were on different paths, thinking that she might hold him back. He had always moved forward, never glancing back until now the car pulled up to a charming little bookstore nestled between an inviting old cafe and a delightful thrift shop. The kind of place that seemed like it was meant for a postcard rather than the ever-expanding city skyline. The window showcased a charming array of handwritten recommendations, and an old wooden sign gracefully hung above the door, while the delightful sound of the bell jingled cheerfully. As he stepped inside, the delightful scent of old paper and vanilla embraced him. It felt small and intimate. It was the opposite of everything he had built for himself, and yet as he stood there taking it in, something about it felt reassuringly familiar. Then he saw her. Charlie stood behind the counter, flipping through a thick hardcover, completely unaware of him at first. Her hair was pinned up, with a few strands slipping loose as she read with the same quiet focus he remembered from long ago. For a brief second he felt the ears melt away, then, as if sensing him, she glanced up. She stilled her fingers pressed lightly into the pages, her expression brightening. He stepped forward, eagerly anticipating her words. It took a moment, but the air was filled with potential. It took longer than expected, but then she exhaled, closing the book with a purposeful snap. Well, I can't say I had. This is on my bingo card. Romeo took another step, and Charlie leaned against the counter, folded her arms, signaling that she was ready for whatever conversation was about to unfold. So, what's the occasion? I thought you might stop by and perhaps sign a few books. He overlooked the dig. I bumped into your daughter yesterday, and she shared a delightful moment with us. Lily nodded as if she had been anticipating this. She has a knack for being first. Impressions. She mentioned that I was forgotten in her book. Charlie raised an eyebrow and did. His jaw tightened. She appeared to believe so, and a smile danced at the corner of her lips. But it wasn't amusement. It felt more like something significant, something meaningful. Romeo exhaled sharply, curious about her age as she tilted her head, thinking of him. She then burst into a hearty, genuine laugh that came straight from the belly. Oh, Romeo, there's so much more to consider beyond just you and your stomach. Twisted so she's not. No, she said, still smiling, and there was a hint of something more. Behind it, now she's not yours. He should have felt a sense of freedom, but instead there was an unusual, surprising sensation in his chest. Something entirely unrelated to paternity. Ben, why did she come to me? Charlie's expression brightened just a bit. Although she didn't respond immediately, she turned, grabbed a notepad from behind the counter, and began to write. She's 7 and confidently scribbling something down. Her voice is more even now, and it's clear she's smart. Brilliant and full of imagination, she has a wonderful passion for stories. The ones that aren't finished? Romeo raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What's that supposed to mean? Charlie eagerly tore the paper from the pad, folded it with care, and slid it across the counter with a sense of purpose. If you're truly seeking answers, it might be best to ask her directly. He paused for a moment before unfolding it. Charlie held his gaze for a moment longer before picking up her book, ready to embark on a new adventure. Once more, she turned to the page she had been on before he entered. It was a clear signal that Romeo recognized. Even though he was shut out, he lingered for a moment, watching her as she returned to her, reading as if he had never stepped through the door at all. Then finally he turned and walked out. Back in the car, he gazed at the address in his hands. Having walked away from her, once believing that success was the only thing that mattered, and he was excited to uncover the feeling that this story, whatever it was, held for him, was just beginning. Romeo sat in his car outside the address. Charlie had given him a charming little house, modest yet well-kept, adorned with potted plants gracefully lining the steps and a cheerful red bicycle leaning against the porch, while the curtains in the front window danced gently. He noticed a quick movement of a small figure before the fabric gracefully fell back into place, and he felt a sense of curiosity. He had never felt uncertain about knocking on someone's door before. There was always a clear path to what would happen next. A contract awaits to be signed, a deal is on the horizon, and an outcome has been thoughtfully anticipated even before he entered. But this was a delightful surprise. He had barely raised his fist to knock when the door swung open, and there she was, Lily Monroe. Standing in the doorway as if she had been eagerly awaiting his arrival, she wore a serious expression, arms crossed, thoughtfully studying him, with a sharpness that surpassed her ears. He couldn't help but smile at how much she resembled Charlie in that moment. You came, she said. Though she seemed a bit unsure, Romeo slipped his hands into his pockets with a confident air. Lily squinted at him, intrigued, stepped aside, inviting him in as if she were the one in charge. The inside of the house was warm and filled with the charm of lived-in books. Drawings pinned to the fridge in delightful arrangements. A faint smell of vanilla wafting through the air. Something freshly baked lingered in the air, creating a delightful contrast to his own sleek, impersonal penthouse, all blast. With the gleam of steel and a beautifully curated design, Lily climbed onto a bar stool at the kitchen counter, watching him with eager anticipation. So, what do you want to know? He leaned against the counter across from her, mirroring her casual stance. Why do you imagine your mom in my book? Tilting her head thoughtfully as she weighs the decision to share it's a trade secret, but it seems like the most important part was overlooked. What could that part be? In that moment, human Romeo exhaled softly, shaking his head with a hint of hope. Lily rolled her eyes, clearly showing her lack of patience for adults, but there's always room for understanding and growth. Who didn't keep up? Your book is all about winning and climbing, showcasing how you work so hard. It's challenging to reach your destination. But it overlooks the moment when his jaw tightened just a bit. I didn't fall, Lily. Raised an eyebrow. That's not what Mom says. He should have seen that coming. Sat in the silence that stretched between them, allowing her words to find their place in his heart, which he had carefully constructed throughout his entire career. He took charge of the narrative and crafted the version of himself that the world experienced. But here, was this child playfully finding gaps in the armor he had dedicated years to strengthening? Dismantling the version of himself he had put to print, he rubbed a hand over his face, exhaling through his nose with a sense of renewal. What exactly did your mom say about me? Lily swung her legs beneath the bar stool, thinking she said you used to be before you became a businessman. There was a person who found themselves in a situation that went deeper than they were willing to acknowledge, and what does that mean? Lily shrugged, saying she didn't know. Maybe you should ask her, he suggested, and she had, given him a name and a closed door. But Lily was just getting started as she slid off the bar stool, made its way to a bookshelf filled with old hardcovers and paperbacks, and pulled out a small, with a battered notebook in hand. She offered it to him, a treasure trove of her thoughts and ideas from the past. Before what? He wasn't sure. He took the notebook, flipping it open to a page filled with familiar handwriting. The date at the top made his pulse quicken with excitement. It was from years ago, back when he had been striving to reach new heights. So focused on the future that he didn't notice the journey he was leaving behind. The words blurred for a moment before he forced himself to focus. You can love someone and still let them go. It doesn't mean it. Doesn't mean you won't look back. He closed the notebook with care. Setting it on the counter, she kept a lot of these. Lily nodded. She used to write She shared a lot about you. And then she paused. He had nothing to say in response, but that was okay. There was still so much to explore. Lily hopped back onto the stool and cracked open his book, flipping through the pages with a sense of excitement, as if she was checking for something wonderful. Did you even read this after you wrote it? Romeo sighed. And of course I did. So, why didn't you include the real stuff? He let out a short laugh, shaking his head. You ask so many questions. Lil grinned. Mom says curiosity is wonderful. A trait a person can have is the way she said it that made him pause. Wasn't just a line Charlie had shared with her. She truly embraced it in the way she navigated through life. She wasn't just a kid on a journey, seeking genuine connections and something meaningful. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt a strong desire to give it to her over the next few days. He discovered that Lily had plenty of thoughts to share about his book, highlighting instances where he had thoughtfully overlooked details, addressing aspects that seemed overly refined. Described the challenges faced at the start, sharing a moment one afternoon while browsing through a section about his. There were early challenges, but the support around you was significant. You didn't mention the role of my mom in your journey. He exhaled slowly, fingers moving thoughtfully. Drumming against the table, your mom is definitely part of the story. Lily narrowed her eyes. She was there, and that makes it special. He wouldn't deny that, but it's my story. She snapped the book shut. It's not the whole story left him without an answer. But the media certainly had plenty to say about it. The time he spent with Lily brought up so many intriguing questions, especially with those photos of him outside. The bookstore circulated with intriguing headlines that captured the board's attention. His PR team was buzzing with anticipation, wondering if there was a scandal, an affair, or perhaps a secret child. They hoped he would make a statement to distance himself before things spun out of control. But Romeo was uncertain about his next steps. She was excited to find Charlie at the bookstore one evening, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed, making headlines. She remarked that it's not her fault if people have nothing better to discuss. Charlie smirked, and it seems like your visits here every other day are adding a little excitement. He didn't deny it. He studied her for a moment before asking, why is Lily so determined to be in my life? Charlie's expression shifted, the teasing edge fading into something softer. Paused for a moment and then exhaled gently, as she believes that Romeo, you truly deserve it. The words resonated deeply, awakening something he hadn't recognized had been empty for years. He had always held a belief. Success is all about what you create and accomplish, and being present in that moment is truly rewarding. As Charlie reflected on the years he had set aside in pursuit of his ambitions, a thought crossed his mind. Perhaps Lily had been onto something after all. Perhaps the party left out was more than just about Charlie. It could be something even greater. Romeo couldn't help but reflect on what Charlie had said, as thoughts of the person he used to be lingered in his mind. Believes you need us. The words had followed him home, finding a place in the quiet corners of his mind, eager to leave. He had spent years believing that he didn't need anyone and that the sacrifices he made were worthwhile. Success used to feel like the only thing that mattered, but now with Charlie and Lily back in his life, he finds himself filled with new possibilities. He discovered that he was spending more time at the bookstore, and it wasn't just for Lily. For Charlie, it was an unexpected journey that he embraced, even if he hadn't fully recognized it. He just kept showing up, and that was enough. He browsed with a smile, pretending he was looking for a book, even though he had never bought one before. There were moments when he simply sat with Lily as she playfully quizzed him about his own life, gently challenging his version of events. One sunny afternoon, after Charlie wrapped up his work, Lily excitedly tugged on Romeo's sleeve and announced, "We're going. To the diner. You're coming." Charlie gave her a look, but Lily was already grabbing. Her coat caught Romeo's eye as he glanced at Charlie in the diner. Charlie let out a sigh while adjusting her coat. "Jacket, you truly don't recall, do you?" He felt it the instant they entered. Was the same place they used to go back when money was tight, where sharing a plate of fries brought them joy and togetherness. The walls were beautifully adorned with cherished old photos, and the booth still held the warmth of countless customers sliding in and out over the years. The jukebox sat in the corner, happily playing songs that brought a wave of nostalgia. Even if you didn't quite recognize them, Charlie slid into the booth across from him, and for a brief moment, it feels as if everything remains the same. "You made a promise here once," she said, playfully picking at. He leaned back at the corner of a napkin, and she nodded, her expression brightening. "It's true that success shines brighter when shared with others." He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. He didn't. It's interesting to think about how he might have perceived things differently back then. But it seems like there was a misunderstanding in that moment. A version of him had vanished the instant he chose to envision a future without Charlie in it, focusing instead on building a bright path with Lily. Unaware of the significance of the moment, she was happily dipping her fries in ketchup, while Romeo couldn't help but feel the impact of it all. Charlie's words resonated within him, and he found himself reflecting on them even more when he returned to his office later that night. The sleek, pristine space stood as a shining testament to all he had built and achieved, sacrificed for, and yet for the first time it felt strangely uplifting as he walked. He walked over to his desk and picked up a copy of his book, The Calloway Legacy, the title shining with promise. Felt confident now, like a testament to a person who had embraced the belief that he was the central figure in his own narrative. The rustling sound made him pause, and he turned to discover a small figure hunched over his desk, tiny hands gripping a red crayon with enthusiasm. Lily stood in the doorway, looking incredibly pleased with himself as he informed security. "She was your VIP guest." "You're welcome." Romeo sighed as he walked over, curious about what exactly was happening. Lily grinned, holding up the page she had been working on. "Are you doing?" she asked, excited about fixing your book. He took it from her, glancing down at the lively jumble of scribbles and corrections, with some words crossed out, hinting at the creative process behind it all, completely transformed with candid edits and playful handwriting. While other sections featured delightful doodles in the margins, stick figures labeled Charlie and Romeo standing next to what appeared to be a delightful tiny bookstore. "This is thorough," he muttered. Lily beamed. "I made a new chapter for you." The genuine one. He turned to the back of the book where she had joyfully added an entire page filled with crayon SC text, Romeo Calloway. He had support from those who believed in him, even when he faced challenges. He might have forgotten, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Romeo gazed at it for a long moment, a feeling stirring within her, as she had taken the thing he had spent years shaping and shared the truth, not the version people wanted, but the authentic version that mattered. "You really don't like the book, do you?" he asked finally. Lily shrugged. "I enjoy stories that are genuine." He set the book down, taking a moment to reflect. The lump in his throat was there. But the next morning he woke up to find his name shining brightly all over the internet. Ku's secret family. Romeo Calloway's hidden past has come to light with some intriguing paparazzi shots. Him outside the bookstore at the diner with Lily, discussing articles that sparked curiosity about his connection to them, suggesting intriguing stories and overlooked lives. The headlines reshaped the narrative into something unappealing, something affordable. Charlie wasn't answering her phone by the time he arrived at the bookstore. The sign on the door read closed. She opened it anyway, and the expression on her face conveyed a sense of determination. He wasn't welcome. Charlie, did you leak it? He took a step back. What's the story? She said, arms crossed tightly. Did you sell this to the press? The accusation hung in the air. Wow, you really believe I would do that? I see you as a savvy businessman who understands how things work. To steer the story, he let out a breath, running a hand through his hair. Charlie. She shook her head, cutting him off. I told you to stay away. I told you. Let's not draw us into your world. Romeo has dedicated his whole career to the art of conversation. Out of situations, but this wasn't a boardroom. And Charlie wasn't someone he could win over with logic. Lily has faith, she said finally, her voice quieter now. That's the part one can't forgive. Charlie swallowed hard. I truly didn't intend for any of this to happen. It happened, and she said it simply. Just like that, she shut the door. Romeo stood there for a long time gazing at the closed sign. The reality of it beginning to settle in for the first time in his life was not about winning for him. It was about doing the right thing. Romeo stood tall, outside the bookstore. Long after Charlie had shut the door in his face, the air felt thick with possibility and the quiet of with the street closing in around him, he had the option to walk away. Just as he always had, moving forward and leaving things behind. But this time he felt a glimmer of hope that moving forward was possible, believing that with effort he could mend what was broken and the headlines would eventually fade away. Every news outlet shared their perspective on the intriguing family scandal. Speculation ran wild, with ideas swirling from dramatic love triangles to unexpected family connections, yet none of it was even close to. The truth is that the board was quite upset, and the PR team was working hard to manage the situation that Romeo had presented to them. He chose to remain neutral, allowing them to spiral while he observed calmly. At his desk, gazing at a blank page, fingers poised above the keyboard. The book he had been wanting to change for years. That his version of the past was the only one that mattered. And that people sought inspiration instead. Complications, but the more time he spent with Lily, the more he realized that wasn't true. People truly desired. Success stories often highlight the triumphs, but they also encompass the messy parts, the failures, and the experiences that make the journey authentic. However, he had chosen to strip those away. Believed there were weaknesses, but now all he could focus on was that little girl looking up at him. Filled with confidence that he was determined to improve his story, and perhaps she had a point. The next morning, Romeo set out on his journey, into a conference room brimming with his legal team, PR reps, and the board all eagerly anticipating his explanation on how he intended to tackle the fallout. He confidently tossed the manuscript onto the table, releasing a new edition. He mentioned his PR director, a polished woman who had built her career focused on guiding men like him away from trouble, sparked a moment of surprise. Excuse me, the book I've clarified that I'm rewriting it, and whispers filled the air around the table, his head held high. Marketing shook his head. Romeo, the book is already a bestseller. Why not keep the momentum going? Wound because I left something out, he leaned forward, resting his hands on the table, and I'm returning it to him. His legal team appeared cautious, and I wondered what exactly was on their minds. Are you planning to share the truth? The room went silent, and his PR? The director took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. But there's a bright side ahead. We can definitely spin this and reframe the narrative. I prefer not to revisit the book. I want to keep it as it is for his marketing director, smiled Romeo. Do you know what this will do to your reputation? He exhaled, running a hand over his face. That's the moment he realized he had already made his decision. And the announcement went live that afternoon, unveiling the exciting new edition of the Calloway legacy, with a chapter dedicated to Charlie Monroe and the truth he had left out. He called it the Forgotten Chapter. It was an exciting revelation. It felt like the world had been eagerly anticipating his words, and then the media burst into action. Interviews poured in from every outlet, each one diving deep into the analysis of what was said. It raised the question of why he had excluded her in the past and what had shifted. People analyzed every detail. He held on to the essence of his statement, yet the one person whose response mattered most had remained silent. Charlie hadn't reached out. He decided to go to her instead of waiting for a text, and he walked over with a smile. In the bookstore, she stood at the register, flipping through a book with a playful air. as if she didn't notice him. He cleared his throat. His throat felt tight as he waited for her to look up, but she didn't. Charlie, instead, turned a page. Unmoved. What do you want, Romeo? He hesitated, then said, a copy of the new edition on the counter between them. She stared at it for a long moment before finally meeting his gaze. You truly, she said it in a quiet voice. And I told you I would. She studied him with intent. Flickering behind her expression was something he couldn't quite place. She didn't reach for the book, but that was okay. Push it aside. At least I can say I didn't do it for the media. Expressed after a moment that they did it because it was the truth and because Lily deserved to know that you truly mattered. Charlie exhaled slowly. Fingers brushed over the cover, and before she could say anything, a small voice from behind the shelves called out, Mom. Lily stood with her arms crossed, watching him as if she had been eagerly anticipating this very moment. Charlie hesitated. Then she eagerly pushed the book toward her daughter. See for yourself. Lily flipped through. She eagerly turned the pages, pausing at the start of the new chapter. After reading the first few lines, she glanced up at Romeo with a bright smile. Eyes wide with delight. You actually fixed it, she said, grinning. He smiled. Something warm settled in his chest. You said it needed to be fixed, she nodded. Then turned to Charlie. Mom, we should keep him. Charlie groaned. Lily. Would he learned his lesson? Charlie let out a breath, shaking her head in disbelief. Lily just shrugged, as if she already knew she had achieved something great. Shifted after that. The ice between him and Charlie began to thaw gradually, but he kept coming back, finding reasons to stop by, and at first, Charlie. She acted as if she didn't notice. Yet she didn't ask him to leave. He began to spend more time with Lily as well. It wasn't something he had planned, but she had a way of making it so inviting and irresistible. One night, she sat next to him at the bookstore, flipping through an old magazine. You always seem to have a hint of solitude in your eyes. Pictures, she said, and he glanced at her, brows furrowing in curiosity as she tapped a photo of him on a business cover, perfectly posed with every detail thoughtfully curated. Mom always says you built an empire, but I believe you created a castle waiting to be filled with life. His breath caught for just a second. Lily shrugged, flipping the page. That's why I wanted you to fix the book. Including family in your story could add depth. He swallowed, feeling a tightness in his throat as he realized he didn't have it. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of possibility about not needing one. Romeo had always celebrated his life and milestones. His first million, his first company acquisition. The moment the Calloway legacy reached the bestseller list, with each one serving as a stepping stone to success. Marker of success, a goal to pursue, a challenge to overcome. But recently the path, the way we perceive time has begun to change. It's no longer just about board meetings or press conferences, but rather about cherishing moments. Like the very first time Lily excitedly pulled him into the bookstore's back room, eager to share a delightful storytime session. That even Kosos could benefit from exploring topics beyond financial reports, or the way Charlie had begun to gently soften little by little until she Noel. Anger looked at him with regret, and even Noah had noticed, smirking every time. Romeo left a meeting early and answered a call with a slight smile, a refreshing change from his usual clipped tone. Becoming a family man, Noah had teased one afternoon as they wrapped up a conference call, and Romeo had playfully brushed it off. At that moment, as he stood in front of the mirror adjusting his cufflinks, he felt a sense of undeniable clarity. The difference was unmistakable in how his shoulders felt lighter and how his mind was no longer constantly occupied by what tonight is a significant moment that has been building for years. Had built walls between himself and anything personal, keeping his world neatly separated, but now he was eager to break those barriers. He wanted to unite them, bringing Charlie and Lily into his world, openly and joyfully, not as something the media speculated about, but as people who truly mattered. The gala was one of the most significant events. The year of a high-profile charity fundraiser, where every major industry leader would be present, was an exciting opportunity for him. Even if he had never cared much before for these events beyond their business advantages, but this time it was different. Lily was thrilled when he arrived at Charlie's house to pick them up. She burst out the door wearing a navy blue dress with a glittery skirt that sparkled in the sunlight. As she twirled, a delicate gold necklace spun gracefully around her neck, adding a touch of elegance. a pendant engraved with the word family, a thoughtful gift he had given her earlier that day. "You look like a princess," Romeo told her. Watching her grin as she spun in a slow circle, making the skirt ripple, I could feel her confidence as she grabbed his hand. "Come on. We're going to make it." Charlie stepped out behind her, adjusting. In earring the sight of her maiden pause, she had always been beautiful, and it was a joy to see her again. Tonight, she appeared transformed. Like a version of herself he had yet to discover. For a long time, someone who embraced the future without being held back by the past, the bookstore, or the sharp edges that had kept him at a distance. "Don't stare," she murmured, a small smirk dancing on her lips as she passed him. "Lips I wasn't." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. The night felt just right in a way that filled him with joy. It wasn't just that they were present or that Lily was radiating happiness as she welcomed everyone like she had been attending galas her whole life. It was wonderful to see how Charlie and Romeo fell into easy conversation, the way she sighed at the pomp and spectacle but remained nearby. As Lily eagerly tugged at his sleeve to make the introduction, Lily leaned in during dinner and whispered, "Mom says you used to be terrible at dancing," but Charlie, overhearing, smirked. "Still is Romeo?" Raised an eyebrow. "That's an interesting assumption." Lily crossed her arms, ready to prove it. He sighed but stood, extending a hand toward Charlie. "Well," she hesitated, then took it, letting him pull her onto the dance floor. For a moment, it felt like stepping. In the past, they had experienced this before, during their early days, before everything had taken a turn. She had always playfully nudged him for being a bit too serious and focused, yet they always seemed to complement each other perfectly. "And you're still guiding like you have a board meeting to get to," she said with a smile. He chuckled softly. "And you're still pretending you don't love it." Her lips parted slightly, and whatever she was about to say was filled with anticipation as Lily, out of nowhere, I spotted my turn Romeo at the edge of the dance floor, waving enthusiastically. Just as he was about to respond, Lily took his hand and twirled him in a lively spin, prompting Charlie to step back. Watching with delight as Lily took over, directing his movements like she was the one leading, he had never laughed so much. This much at one of these events. By the end of the night, when they joyfully stepped outside into the refreshing evening air, Romeo felt a gentle stir within him. He had dedicated years to pursuing greater things, yet, tonight, for the first time, he felt a sense of abundance. Lily reached for his hand, still clutching the tiny silver clutch she had insisted on bringing. She declared it was the best night ever. Romeo smiled. Squeezing her fingers lightly, she smiled, knowing that it truly was a moment of transformation. Everything unfolded in an instant. A screech of tires, the distant blare of a horn, a sudden blur of movement caught his eye from the corner of his vision, and then there was Lily. He turned just in time to see her. She stood small and delicate at the edge of the curb, as a car approached with its headlights shining brightly. In the shadows, he navigated, where everything seemed to blend, the slow and the swift, in a unique dance. His feet left the ground. His arms reached out, and though he was far, there was still a sense of possibility in the air. The scream echoed, creating a powerful impact. The sound of metal against flesh, the dull thud of a body hitting pavement, the sharp, choked cry of Charlie's voice. Amidst the chaos, Romeo was already on the move, and the excitement of the crowd was palpable. Someone was calling for an ambulance, and his mind was just starting to take it all in. I noticed the small, quiet figure lying in the street, Lily. Her dress slightly crumpled. The glittering skirt darkened with something unexpected, her tiny gold necklace, the one he had given just hours ago. The chain glinted beautifully under the streetlights as he fell to his knees beside her. Hands trembling with excitement, he reached out to Lily, but she didn't respond. Charlie was right there beside him, hands gently resting on Lily's shoulder, voice filled with urgency as she whispered her name repeatedly, hoping to bring her back to consciousness. Romeo gently pressed his fingers to her pulse, searching, a faint beat still present. The ambulance arrived just in time. The siren echoed through the night, red lights dancing across the pavement as hands gently pulled him back, making way for the paramedics to step in and take charge, voices offering quick guidance. Yet his attention was entirely on Lily and the way her hand hung gently at her side, her fingers adorned with delicate hints of red. Charlie was trembling with excitement as Romeo reached out for her, and this time she embraced him as the ambulance doors closed shut, and then they were gone. Romeo had faced challenges before, but he was ready to embrace new opportunities ahead. Business ventures that faced challenges, partnerships that didn't work out, he had always viewed them as opportunities for growth. There are lessons to learn from challenges. And while this may not be something to fix, it offers valuable insights. There's potential for recovery with the right approach. And while Lily is gone, the small funeral was a heartfelt gathering. Calm Charlie preferred a simple approach, avoiding the spotlight and the well-meaning gestures from unfamiliar faces, who had never known her daughter. Just a few wonderful people who had been a part of Lily's brief but meaningful life, the bookstore staff, a few teachers and some neighbors, and Romeo was feeling a bit uncertain about his role. He decided to go, embracing the moment, as he couldn't picture being anywhere else. Charlie sat. In the front, she gazed ahead with a serene expression, her hands gently clasped together in her lap. Yet she remained still, silent, and hardly blinked. Romeo had witnessed sorrow before, but not like this. When it was over, people filtered out, offering soft words. With heartfelt condolences, Romeo remained behind, observing as Charlie stood beside the small framed picture of Lily, her fingers gently brushing the surface. Over the edge of the glass, she spoke without turning. Her love for you was profound. Much to his surprise, his throat tightened as he realized you would always be there. When something unfortunate occurred, Romeo remained silent, while Charlie let out a breath, trembling slightly. Her head tilted slightly. I wish I had held her hand. He closed his eyes, feeling a sharp pain twisting through him. I should have realized it was the first time either of them had experienced this. Recognized what was challenging them intensely, the wafts, the persistent, demanding cycle. What if he had walked on the other side? What if they had left just 5 minutes earlier? Imagine the possibilities. If it had been faster, it wouldn't have changed the outcome. Charlie simply chose not to push. She turned away, not meeting his gaze, feeling as though she had given all she could. He realized that Romeo had stopped going into the office, and Noah made a few calls. Initially with concern, then with a touch of frustration, he chose to overlook him. The company was of little significance. The meetings, the deals, the perfectly curated world he had built, it all felt so promising. He discovered that he was visiting Charlie's house more frequently than ever before. Inside, just enjoying the moment. Sitting on the porch or sometimes in his car, embracing the unexpected. Anything, just unable to be anywhere else. Charlie never told him to leave, and she never invited him in. Yet she existed in her grief, and he guided her, understanding all along. Lily's room was exactly as she had left it, a reminder of the moments they shared, and though she couldn't fix this for her, there was a sense of hope in the air. He had stepped inside once expecting it to feel empty, but it was filled with warmth and possibility, filled with her books stacked haphazardly on the shelf. Crayon drawings pinned to the wall, a small stuffed bear sitting happily. Upright on the bed, as if it was eagerly anticipating her return, Romeo sat on the floor, allowing his back to rest against the. He picked up a book from her nightstand, flipping through the pages with a sense of curiosity, even though he wasn't really reading. His fingers discovered a loose sheet of paper, neatly folded in half and tucked between the pages. He opened it, and it was from her version of his book, the one she had beautifully rewritten. His office was filled with crayons and a strong belief that she had nailed it. Romeo Calloway didn't tackle it solo. He had support. Support from those who had faith in him. Even during times he may have lost sight of it. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. His hands clenched the paper tightly, his breath unsteady. She had wanted to be part of his story, not for herself, but for him, because she had noticed something. He took a deep breath, gazing at the words and the unique handwriting with a sense of curiosity. A tiny heart she had sketched in the corner, his voice soft and gentle. Romeo had always believed that time would bring resolution to everything, and he was determined to finish it. What people said was that pain dulled with the months, that wounds closed if you gave them long enough, and it was true. Months passed, and while the pain lingered, it transformed into a part of him, shaping his journey forward. Something he carried, something that would always be a part of him. He stopped waiting for it to go away and instead embraced them. The only thing that felt right was when he rewrote the book. It wasn't easy, but some days the journey brought a sense of fulfillment. Words flowed effortlessly onto the page, as if they had been eagerly anticipating their moment to be shared. On other days, he gazed at staring at the screen for hours. struggling to articulate the depth of what had been lost, yet he persevered. Heading out, as Lily would have wished, Noah was the first to notice the shift he mentioned one afternoon. Leaning against Romeo's office door with his arms crossed. You finally crossed paths, rewriting history in a beautiful way. Romeo simply nodded once the manuscript was complete. He confidently submitted it, embracing the moment without hesitation, skipping the press meetings and the meticulously crafted statements. Only the pages that were meant to be shared. The new edition of the Calloway Legacy was released 3 months later, and it brought a fresh perspective. This time, the success was about the journey. The numbers were just a part of the experience. And the headlines were merely a backdrop. Wondered about his reasons for rewriting it, for including her, and how a man known for his careful calculations had suddenly changed his approach. Chose to share something genuine with the world, yet Romeo overlooked it all because the only person whose opinion truly mattered was the one who would never get to read it. Along with the only other person who. What was truly deserved was the presence of someone who had been there from the beginning. The bookstore remained unchanged, still filled with the delightful scent of old books. Paper and cinnamon still had books stacked in uneven piles, creating a charming atmosphere where time seemed to dance in its own delightful rhythm. Charlie stood behind the counter, eagerly flipping through something, not yet looking up, as he placed a copy of the book with a sense of anticipation. On the counter, she paused for a moment, then gently closed the book. Had been holding and rested her hands on the counter, fingers brushing over the edges of the new edition. Her gaze moved with a sense of wonder. To the title, then to him. For a moment neither of them spoke, then Romeo exhaled. She would have loved it. Charlie swallowed, blinking against the unexpected sting of tears. She ran a hand over the cover. She traced the gold lettering of the last chapter title, The Forgotten Chapter. Her voice was barely audible. Above a whisper, "She would have adored you." Romeo's breath tingled as Charlie stepped forward. Around the counter, she paused for just a moment before joyfully closing the distance between them for the first time since the accident. They held each other, the grief transformed into a shared strength. They never would, but it felt like a weight lifted, no longer something they had to carry alone. Past. And this time Romeo seized the opportunity. He became a part of Charlie's life in the quiet ways. He fixed the broken shelf in the bookstore that she had been meaning to get to. He picked up coffee on slow mornings when neither of them wanted to talk but cherished each other's presence. He discovered the books she loved, would set aside for him before he even knew he wanted them. There were no grand declarations, no sudden revelations of two people discovering their path through an unexpected journey, embracing the strength to thrive together. Morning, months later, when Charlie joyfully set an extra coffee on the C with his name on it before he had even walked in, Romeo realized he had been on a journey of discovery. And success was just a part of that adventure. He had been searching for this, and now he was so close to completing what he had begun. Lily's headstone was beautifully smooth under his fingertips. The carved letters stood sharp against the sunlight filtering through the trees. He set the book down beside it, allowing the gentle breeze to playfully ruffle the pages before resting his hand over the cover. "I completed our." A golden ray of sunlight broke through the branches, warming the book's surface, making the gold lettering shine, and for the first time in his life, Romeo Calloway felt a sense of connection. Romeo had. It's exciting to think about the possibility of writing a sequel, especially to something so personal as the new edition of his autobiography. But as days turned into weeks and then months, he realized that life had a way of moving forward, bringing new opportunities and experiences along the journey. Memories of Lily lingered, and he still felt the gentle tug at his heart, the edges of his mind whenever he passed the toy store or heard a child's laughter. The feeling that she was meant to be. There's a small hand in his pointing eagerly at some new discovery, the ache, dull to a familiar throb rather than the sharp twist that had once taken his breath away. But it remained a constant presence in his life, a gentle reminder of what he had lost and what he had discovered along the way. He and Charlie are spending more time together, which is wonderful. There was a gentle unfolding of feelings and a natural progression to fill the space Lily left behind. Instead, they discovered solace in small routines that eased the ache of absence. On Tuesdays, they restocked new arrivals at the bookstore, sharing a warm companionship behind the dusty shelves, occasionally pausing to exchange a look that conveyed so much more than words ever could. On Thursdays, Romeo lovingly tended to the corner garden outside, Charlie had always been focused on other things, but he believed that planting seedlings and herbs would be beneficial. Business sometimes. He'd notice her gazing at him through the glass, her expression steady as if she's still. It was hard to believe he was there. Friday nights often had them joyfully sharing takeout in the cozy office at the back of the bookstore, both feeling a delightful sense of exhaustion, content to enjoy the soothing hum of the city around us. They gradually created spaces for one another, without any formal arrangement or labels, just a beautiful shared connection. Realizing that both were seeking comfort in each other amidst the shadows that grief had cast one Saturday afternoon, a small boy wandered into the store, his eyes sparkling as they roamed over the shelves until he discovered a delightful corner filled with children's treasures, books that had once been Lily's favorite spot. Romeo noticed him from the next aisle, observing how hesitant he seemed as Charlie, feeling a bit uncertain about his right to settle there, noticed him too. Taking a moment to pause while pricing a stack of classics, the two of them exchanged a glance before Romeo took a step forward. Lowering himself to one knee beside the child asked if the boy needed help finding something, his voice low and calm. No. The child eagerly mumbled something about waiting for his mother, who was outside on the phone, with a hint of impatience in his voice, like a little Romeo nodded and handed him a picture book about dragons, recalling how Lily used to excitedly shove those very pages under his nose, eagerly asking him to read the funny parts out loud. The boy's face lit up as he flipped through the pages. Amidst the vibrant images, moments later, his mother entered with a warm apology for the inconvenience. But Romeo nearly smiled and waved away her concern when the boy left, clutching that book to his chest. Romeo felt a positive shift in the air, a delightful beam of warmth that joyfully traveled between him and Charlie. She stepped away from the counter and happily joined him in the children's section, kneeling in the spot where the boy had been joyfully running around. Her fingers glided over the spines of the books that Lily once adored. Her breathing was a bit uneven, but she held back tears, and he placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, and without either of them saying anything, they stayed like that for a while, embracing the moment to soften the jagged edges of their shared grief. Later that week, Romeo received a wonderful series of invitations to speak at conferences about the revised edition of his autobiography has come in. Businesses and schools are excited to learn about the story behind his transformation, even though there was a time he overlooked them, unsure of what to expect. Reliving that narrative in front of strangers was something he could embrace without fracturing all over again. But one invitation truly caught my eye, a delightful event for young entrepreneurs at a community center that also hosted an after-school program. He thought of Lily and how she had faith in truth and embracing the messy, as he embraced the various parts of life. He made the choice to welcome the day. When he arrived, the room was bustling with energy. With bright faces, some still in college, a few older, but all brimming with the same passion for success he once had, he shared his vision of creating a company. Discussing the lessons learned from mistakes and the value in overcoming losses, he shared with them the vision of what truly mattered. Recounting the story of the book he had rewritten and reflecting on the achievements he once believed in, it was great to discover that the questions that followed were not focused on stock options or global expansions, were all about possibilities and learning how to navigate them. He responded with sincerity, reflecting on Lily and how she had encouraged him to revise his work life story, just like she had joyfully scribbled in those margins with her crayons when he returned to that evening at the bookstore. Charlie was by the register, cheerfully flipping the sign from open to closed, and he could see the curiosity in her expression, the subtle question about how it had gone. He told her in a quiet voice that it has been more challenging than he anticipated, but there's a sense of liberation in it. She nodded, and they wrapped things up together. In the quiet moment, they walked side by side to her door, where he paused, contemplating his next move with a sense of hope. As she said good night, she pleasantly surprised him by inviting him in for tea, and they both chose to keep Lily's name out of the conversation. Night enveloped the space, yet her presence filled the air as they both naturally gravitated toward the small table in the living room where Lily had once sat, coloring pictures of dragons and the delightful way they spoke about the future as if it could hold endless possibilities. They discussed both the challenges and the bright possibilities ahead as they shared small plans for the bookstore, including the exciting idea of possibly expanding Children's section about creating a corner dedicated to literacy programs is a fantastic idea. Brought a flicker of warmth to Charlie's eyes, one that Romeo recognized as a hopeful sign. They agreed that it could be a wonderful way to celebrate Lily's passion for reading while keeping it a joyful tribute in the weeks that followed. Romeo discovered a deeper connection to Charlie's world than he had ever experienced, even during their youthful days of love. I discovered how to manage inventory, suggest books, and handle a leaky roof on a rainy day without needing to call for help. Construction crew, as it was often fulfilling to mend things with your own two hands. The bookstore transformed into a reflection of them both, filled with serene spaces and cherished moments, including those that shaped them. Charlie started sorting through Lily's belongings, happily deciding which items to keep and which to donate, with Romeo lending a helping hand. He always respected Lily's personal drawings, asking for permission first, as he wanted to make sure he honored her creativity and feelings. Charlie would pause over a teddy bear or a battered notebook and hold it close for a moment, but she always moved forward. Complete despair, he was there, and they were discovering how to stand again, even with the weight of loss pressing on. One sunny afternoon, a package arrived addressed to Charlie, and she eagerly opened it. It was exciting to come across numerous letters from readers who had found the new edition of Romeo's book, and most were filled with enthusiasm, of compassion, expressing their experiences of losing loved ones and how they valued the openness. A few were from parents whose children were curious about Lily and eager to learn more about the little girl who had touched a billionaire's heart. Charlie read them quietly, sometimes allowing a faint tremor to pass through her, but she always held strong instead. On a crisp autumn evening, Romeo strolled to the cemetery, embracing the solitude with a sense of purpose as he carried a small potted plant with vibrant purple flowers, which he believed Lily would have adored, was placed gently beside the headstone. Resting his hand on the cool surface, he stood there for a while, envisioning all the wonderful things he would share with her, places he envisioned taking her, the stories they would dream of reading together. After a few moments, he straightened. Letting a calm exhale pass through him, he embraced the idea that while he couldn't change what had happened, he could celebrate her memory by how he decided to move ahead. When he returned to the bookstore, Charlie was sitting outside on the steps with a mug of tea in her hands. She seemed to be waiting for him, and as he settled beside her, their shoulders brushed gently. She slipped her hand through the crook of his arm, and together they gazed out at the street, watching with a sense of wonder. Headlights flicker by and leaves drift across the pavement. Though they didn't speak of Lily in that moment, her presence was felt all around them. Presence and the quiet sense of understanding between them. This was their life, now marked by loss, but also filled with hope, transformed by a collective resilience. The space that Lily had departed blossomed into something they created together, not forgetting her or trying to move on as though she had never existed, but embracing the journey of carrying her with them. Wasn't a victory, not in any sense that Romeo had ever recognized, but it was something else, something more genuine. And if Lily were here, she'd smile and say that the story that truly matters is not the ending he once wrote for himself, but the journey along the way, one he discovered when he finally opened his heart. If you enjoyed this story, do share your thoughts. Don't forget to leave a like. It truly supports the channel, and if you're looking for more uplifting and touching stories like this, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this one. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next story.